Welcome to the dark side of BEASTwriter. I am your host, Ryan Sakamoto, and today we are going to break down the first episode. I am starting a scheduled streaming platform on here, YouTube, Facebook, wherever the case may be, and we're going to have a scheduled podcast coming in hot. So, as you guys know, I like to run grades and watch film. That's what we do here in the DOB. So, we have our first episode of Grade the Snap, not the box score. It's something that I always use, kind of like one of those things where it's like, hey, look, man, like you can read the box scores all we want, but that doesn't tell the true story behind the why some of these players are getting love or not getting enough love, right? So let's go ahead and break it down today as it pertains to the 2023 NFL Draft. We are breaking down Nolan Smith, the Georgia product, the #1 recruit coming out of high school. If you guys don't know who he is, I'm going to break it down for you brick by brick. So we're not going to waste any more time. Let's get up these tickers because I know you guys are fiending for my college prospects evaluations, right? And so here we go. Let's talk about Georgia outside linebacker Nolan Smith. Who is Nolan Smith? Well, Nolan Smith, again, I like to break down all my videos into 3 parameters. Who are the players or coaches involved? Why the move could be made, or in this case, will be made. And the last but not least parameter is the instant gratification versus long-term gains. All right, so let's go ahead and bring up that ticker right here as we have Nolan Smith. He clocks in at 6'3", 235, 240 pounds, give or take. Now, as he gets to go to the weigh-ins and at the NFL Combine, if he's going to get the, I believe he's got the invite. I haven't got the list yet. I haven't checked that out. But let's just say he goes to the Combine or his pro day and he's going to get his measurements. It remains to be seen whether or not he's going to be playing or participating, and I'm going to break that down in this video as we unfold the Georgia product, Nolan Smith, right? All right, so who is Nolan Smith, right? So he came out of high school, was #1 recruit coming out of high school in the nation. He won the Anthony Munoz Award given to the top high school lineman. Offense, defense, doesn't matter. And you know where that's going, right? All these Power 5 conferences wanted him, especially the SEC. Roll Tide roll, but he went to Georgia. But here we are. All right. So I graded 14 games of Nolan Smith. And the reason why I wanted to go back and grade 14 games, and I graded half from last year and half from this year, is simply because of the fact that, look, if you're going to grade a prospect, you're going to have to not guess, because people say, oh, it's a crapshoot. You don't know. No, you get paid to do a job. That's your job. You get paid millions of dollars to make the right pick. So you have to go back to the film. And just like in the NFL, I always talk about a player's growth is from going into year 1 to year 2. Same thing goes from your sophomore year into your year of eligibility. Well, in this case, for Nolan Smith, it'd be his junior season, right? So what do I see from Nolan Smith? Why do I think he is a good prospect? And why do I believe the Las Vegas Raiders would be a prime fit for him if he was available in the range that I'm going to talk about? All right. So I graded 14 games of him the past 2 seasons. He is a little bit scheme dependent. I'm not going to sit here and lie. I don't see a 4-3 defensive end. I see more of a 3-4 outside linebacker, mainly playing the weak side. And again, we're going to go ahead and talk about it when evaluating the game film. But what I like from Nolan Smith is a lot of different things, right? I think the NFL traits convert, and I think he's very smart. And I think when you have those intangibles, you know, a guy who's tough, physical, athletically gifted, can play in a 34 base, but then also you can kind of use them as a chess piece like the Dallas Cowboys do with Micah Parsons. And so you can kind of line up in a variety of different ways. I think that's going to create flexibility, if you will, from a defensive coordinator standpoint. And then you take advantage of what I see on film, right? I don't know if he's going to be running because he has an injury. He's dealing with a torn pec injury that he suffered in week 8 against Florida after making a tackle for loss. I believe it was for a 2-yard tackle for loss. And then he ultimately ended the game in the first quarter. But getting back to this podcast as it pertains to Nolan Smith, let's go ahead and talk about what I see on film, right? I see a 4.6 speed guy. All right, 4.6 speed, maybe 4.65, I don't see a 4.7 guy. He's really good. I see a 4.6, sub 4.65 guy. Now watch him run in the 4.3s. No, that's not going to happen. But no, that's what I see on film. Now, again, from the evaluation standpoint, when you grade the snap, instead of grading the box score, you want to kind of, and I've been doing this for years, so I can kind of gauge, and you guys can check my Twitter receipts and Beast receipts up there. I get it down to 1/100th of a second on what a player is going to run. I think for Javon, if you go back to Javonte Williams for the Denver Broncos fans, just look at my measurables with him coming out of the combine. I say he was going to do this, have a vertical of this, have a broad jump of this. Hey, the 40-yard dash, this, whatever the case may be. But here we are today, right? Talking about Nolan Smith. So again, I think he's more of a weak side linebacker, more of a 3-4 outside linebacker. And the reason I say that is because he's just not big enough, right? He's a 235, 240 guy. You can bulk him up in the 255, 260 range, but how is that going to affect his game, right? It could be a positive. It could also be a negative, right? You can build up the strength, maybe build up his lower half and his upper half, but then days, like, are you compromising any of that speed that makes him so good, right? That initial get off that we're going to be talking about, right? Because he can cover running backs out of the flat. So then you want to put him on the weak side, not the strong side. You want to put him on the weak side, and he can rush the passer. Again, don't grade the box score. You're going to look at that and be like, oh, he only had 2.5 sacks the last 2 years. Well, if you run the grades, he had a lot of quarterback pressures, a lot of quarterback hits, and he created a lot of those opportunities for the Georgia defensive linemen up front and his counterparts. All right, so I'm just saying, let's go ahead and grade the snap, not the box score. Here we go. And he's very good at chasing plays backside. That's one thing that you want to see from a weak side linebacker. Again, this is why I think he's a fit. When people say, oh, he's a scheme fit because he's a 4-3 guy or a 3-4 guy. No, let's peel back layers of the onion to really get to the core. He is a weak side linebacker. So if you're going to plug him as a weak side linebacker, how do you see him fit into your scheme? What's the why behind why you want to draft this guy as a 3-4 outside linebacker as opposed to a 4-3 defensive end? Look, we're going to talk about this. All right. So he has elite get off, which we talked about, which helps convert that speed to power conversion. Now he can get a little bit stronger. If I was to put a number on it on how many reps he can rep of 225, again, this is my field. I wouldn't be surprised if he hits. He's a really good athlete, and he's really strong. But sometimes he gets swallowed up by bigger offensive tackles. That's just the nature of the beast at the line of scrimmage down in the trenches. But what I see from Nolan Smith when evaluating the game film, I think he can rep out anywhere from 18 to 22 reps of 225. That's just now he's dealing with a torn pec. And obviously, if you're doing the bench press, that's all pec muscles, right? So I don't think he's going to be doing that. So if I did take a guesstimate, I think that's what he would hit if he was able to do that measurable. But let's go ahead and grade the film, right? Love this. I love talking football with all you guys. It's very fun. Yeah, if you guys haven't noticed, it's very fun for me. All right, so put that ticker up. Yeah, let's grade the snap, not the box score, right? So when grading the film, this is what I got over the last 2 years, 14 games graded. All right, 14 games graded. He had an unnecessary roughness penalty against Auburn. If you go back and watch the film, it's questionable. But it was unnecessary roughness penalty on the run, and it resulted in a 6-yard loss of hidden yardage. But that's the only penalty he had in the last 2 years. All right. Granted, he was missing the remainder half of the second half of the season this year because of the Florida game due to a torn pec injury. But getting back to it, that's not bad. 1 penalty in 2 years, in 14 games, not bad, right? Furthermore, let's go ahead and talk about his run fit integrity. We talked about this with Coach Graham. He talked about run fit discipline, right? Can you ID the ball carrier? Can you stack and shed? Can you lock out? These are things that, furthermore, let's talk about hand placement. Do you know where to hit the guy in terms of hitting him in the V and then also leveraging your outside hand on that outside shoulder so that you can stack after you, shed after you stack? Can you do these things, right? And it's like, you look at Nolan Smith and he can do all these things. Whether it be a zone read play, I mean, he made a play backside on a zone read play before. He also did it on the play side. And so he's very, very fundamentally sound when it comes to knowing your keys pre to post snap. And these things are you look for as a scouting evaluator. All right. And so this is things that I look for. This is what makes it so fun. I see these things from Daniel Jeremiah's big board, in which I disagree. I disagree. I'm not saying that he's not good. The reason why he's on NFL Network and I'm not. But there are some disagreements here in terms of like he has Tyree Wilson coming off the board. And come on, that's clickbait, bro. There's no way, whether I'm a Roll Tide fan or not, there's no way Will Anderson is not going to be the first edge rusher off the board. I'm just saying, come on, bro. Let's keep it 100. That's clickbait. That's clickbait here on February 23rd. That's clickbait. That's clickbait. Now watch Tyree Wilson be a Hall of Famer. I just don't see that happening when grading the snap, not the box score. But here we go. All right, so let's go back to Nolan Smith. I really like what this guy brings to the table, right? 7 missed run fits all in 2021. And so you see this, that was his sophomore season. He only had 7 missed run fits on that Georgia defensive line. That's pretty good, right? Furthermore, he only had 5 missed tackles in the entire season. I mean, that's really, really good. And so you had 5 missed tackles last year, 1 missed tackle this year. That adds up to 6 total missed tackles. All right. And then let's take it a step further, peeling back layers of the onion to get to the core. Let's talk about the good things that he did, right? What are some of the good things that he did? We had 5 tackles for no gain, all in 2021. So that was last year when grading the snap, not the box score. And he also had 5.5 tackles for loss for minus 14 yards of hidden yardage. If you look that all together and you say, hey, look, he was on the line with Jordan Davis. He was playing on the line with Nolan, or he is Nolan Smith, but you are also on a line or defensive front 7 when you had guys like Nakobe Dean there, right? And so you look at this, and obviously Jalen Carter, we're going to talk about him later. Devontae Wyatt, right? You look at this and you grade the snap and you're like, man, this guy really flashes, right? You know, if you look at my Twitter receipts, I said that Jalen Carter flashed for me, and I think he was going to be a better pro than Devontae Wyatt. And people are like, oh, Devontae Wyatt's a round one. Dude, Jalen Carter's a backup. And I'm like, Jalen Carter is going to be like a top 10 pick next year, bro. And where are those people now? They're crickets. He might go number 1 overall, although not likely. But he might. You just never know. Definitely top 5. But getting back to it, let's go ahead and grade the snap, not the box score when it comes to Nolan Smith, right? So aside from having those 5.5 tackles for loss that all came for minus 14 yards of hidden yardage, he also had 10.5 tackle wins and run fit integrity, which is really, really good. And you guys got to remember, Georgia was blowing out teams left and right. So in order to formulate these grades, you kind of have to have kind of like a weighted average, so to speak, because a lot of times they're not in certain down and distance situations. So in my algorithm, I account for that. So it's not just, you can't just put a grade on a player. What if he's not even in on like 75% of the pass rush downs? Like, you're going to put a grade on that? Like, no, they're getting blown out. Of course he's going to be on the sideline. Come on, bro. But people like to grade the box score. Not here in the DOB. All right, he had 3 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery, which is really good. Obviously, he had 17 quarterback pressures, 5 quarterback hits, and grading 14 games over the last 2 seasons. He also had 2.5 sacks for only minus 9 yards, all in 2021. So he had no sacks in 2022. And if I was sitting on the table, right, and I'm pounding for a guy, and we're sitting there in the 18 to 24 range, because that's where I have him mocked, in the 18 to 24 range, and then that's where I have him graded. That's where I see him going. You look at this and be like, hey, look, we're sitting there at 15. Do we want to take a guy like Nolan Smith, who had 0 sacks in 2022, but in 2021, you kind of saw NFL traits where he flashes, right? And it's like, okay, what, Ryan Sakamoto, BEASTwriter, what makes you think, since you're the Beast, what makes you think that Nolan Smith is going to be a good pro, or that he's valued at the pick that we're going to select? Because you have him graded at 18-24, but yet you want us to take him right now as we speak, as I look on my big board, going number 15 to the Green Bay Packers. Well, what I just say? He's a 3-4 scheme fit, all right? Furthermore, you look at not just the big board, or what we like to call the vertical board, but you have to cross-check that with the horizontal board. The horizontal board is a different board than what I have back here. It basically breaks down, if you play fantasy football, I'm going to put it in layman terms for you, breaks it down in tiers, but then also breaks it down in tiers by position. So if there's a 1A and a 1B, is it better value to take that 1B player over that 1A player because the depth at that position is likely the cream of the crop, as opposed to some of these other positions that are kind of like, low one the depth chart in terms of finding value, right? So that's what you got to do. You're going to have to mirror match, right? And that's what makes this game so fun. It's pieces to the puzzle to finding which teams are going to take who. And that's why I love this. That's why I'm not afraid to put my Beast receipts out on the tape. It checks out. You guys know it checks out. But here we are. Nolan Smith, like him. 0 sacks in 2022. I'll be going to that guy, be like, okay, grade the snap, not the box score. Yeah, he missed. Did you know that he didn't play since week 8 against Florida? No, you didn't know that? Oh, and then you go, oh, well, durability is a concern. Like, that's a risk, because back last year in 2021, he was playing with a left arm brace because, again, he got injured, missed a game. And I'll be like, man, what you smoking? Turn on the film. Players get hurt. Jalen Carter got hurt. Played with a sprained MCL. So what? Played with a bum ankle. So what? Injuries happen. How you come back, and again, if you look at the analytics will show you something. Yes, injuries do take a toll on your body. Yes, if you had a torn ACL, yes, 70% of injuries ACL injuries, there's a high percent of those that are going to develop arthritis in the affected knee. Okay. That's just a known fact, being NASM trained. But getting back to it, I don't see that with Nolan Smith. Give me Nolan Smith. If I was talking to Brian Gutekunst, the GM of the Packers, or if I was talking to Matt Malaspina, the former director of college scouting with the San Francisco 49ers, now with the Green Bay Packers, but hey, look, Matt Malaspina, I know you like 4.3 speed wide receivers like Marquez Valdez-Scantling, AJ Jen. I get it. But let's go after this Nolan Smith guy. He'd look at me and be like, oh, here we go. But no, this is what I like about Nolan Smith. I think he's a really, really good player because when I grade the snap, not the box score, you can see the NFL traits that check off. Now, durability is a concern. I'm not saying draft this guy and forget about the durability issues. No, it is a concern. It is cause for concern. But we're going to break it down to why it shouldn't be as big as a concern as maybe someone may make it out to be. All right, let's go ahead and talk about that. Talking about the weak side linebacker position when it comes to Nolan Smith, right? So, again, you look at a guy who was targeted 9 times over the last 14 games in my grading system, 7 of those going for completions, 5 of those 7 going for first downs. And when you see a guy like that, you're thinking to yourself, okay, can this guy cover running backs out of the flat? Yes, absolutely. You turn on the game film, he does a very good job. Just because he wasn't targeted, you can kind of see how he plays those running backs coming to the flat, how he plays the tight end coming cross motion, and how he adjusts his assignment pre to post snap. You see these little things. You wouldn't see these things from a box score. You don't even know what to look for if you don't know how to grade. It's kind of like NASA. It's like a rocket scientist, like trying to figure out, look, I'm telling you right now, Nolan Smith is the real deal. He's a real deal. All right. And again, he suffered that elbow injury week 10 in 2021 against Tennessee. We all know about that. Just talked about it earlier. But his best game came 3-4 weeks later in the college football playoff semifinal against Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines. That was his best game of the year. So is the stage too big for him? No. Check that box off. GM Dave Ziegler. Check that box off. Brian Gutekunst. Check that box off. Nick Caserio. Check that box off. Ryan Poles. Check that box off. John Schneider. Check that box. You know what I'm saying? Martin Mayhew. Check that box. I mean, we could go on the Omar Khan, year 2. GM Eric DeCosta taking over for Ozzie Newsome, even though Ozzie Newsome's still there in Baltimore. Come on, let's talk football. I'm telling you, all these teams I just pointed out, majority of them are 3-4 teams, which is why they're all around the time that they're going to be on the clock. I'm just saying, just putting it out there. And he also picked up an INT. So you look at this and you say, Nolan Smith can actually be a really good player. Now, the sample size to pull from is very limited because he was injured this year. But he had his best game on the game's biggest stage last year in Michigan, or in the Michigan game, in the college football semifinal, in the game that I graded. He had 4 quarterback pressures, 1 quarterback hit, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble, and 1 tackle for no gain versus the run. You add that all together, and you got a really, really good grade coming out of that game. I'm just saying. All right. So we all talked about the injury this year. Week 8 suffered that injury against Florida, making that tackle for loss. And again, that dealt with a torn pec injury. So now he's dealing with a torn pec. But look, torn pecs happen to a lot of defensive front 7 players. Happens to Stephon Tuitt. Just go back. Come on, let's talk analytics. Let's talk history. Go back to Stephon Tuitt, right? With the Pittsburgh Steelers. It happened to a lot of these other players. Just, you know what? I'll put up the Beast receipt on Twitter. I pointed this out. Because you know why? Because on the defensive line, it's a push-pull movement. A lot of the movements, you talk about functional strength, a lot of the movements you're making is a lot of push-pull movement, stacking and shedding. That's you want to talk about push-pull. Forget about the rip. Just saying. Not a very easy thing to do. You can't just say stack and shed. You got to ID the ball carrier. You got to peek into the backfield. You got to make sure that your real estate is not crowded up so where you can hit that tackling zone to where you can make a play at or near behind the line of scrimmage. Or if not, box to spill that play for your second level backers behind you to go ahead and make that play for you. Come on, let's talk football. But you won't see that from a box score. The film doesn't lie. The guy is a beast. Nolan Smith graded out as a 6.0 out of a 10 in my grading system in 2021. And again, in 2022, small sample size to pull from, but he did grade out a 6.9 out of a 10. So again, I like what I see from Nolan Smith for a lot of different reasons. I think he's going to be a really good player at the next level. Now, the question remains to be seen. Who's going to target this guy, right? Who's going to target, let me put up that ticker. Who's going to target Nolan Smith? Well, you look at the New England Patriots, right? You look at guys like the Green Bay Packers, the Pittsburgh Steelers, for crying out loud, the Tampa Bay Bucks, the Seattle Seahawks, John Schneider, I just mentioned him. All right. The Los Angeles Chargers, talking about Tom Telesco. He can do it, right? He comes for the Bill Polian tree, right? Ryan Grigson tree, right? Sort of a deal. Baltimore, Eric DeCosta, I just talked about him earlier, the Baltimore Ravens. Jacksonville Jaguars, my guy, GM Trent Baalke, and Ethan Wall there, who's now the assistant GM, coming over from Fortnite. Come on, let's talk. He can use them. I know he likes Georgia products. I know for a fact, right? New York Giants can also use them. Joe Shine, right, can use them. And obviously the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, the Raiders hold the least likely position to get him. Why? Because they hold the number 7th pick. I don't think he's going to go in the top 10. Like I said, I have him graded in the 18 to 24 range. I did talk about this, though. If you guys watch my other live stream on making sense of what the Raiders will do at number 7, I said they can trade it out there and get a cluster of players that they like. So if they can trade into that 15 range, like let's say they move back from 7 to like maybe the 13 to 18 range, somewhere in there, and still get a cluster of players that they feel can help the team without any drop off or minimal drop off in production from where the assets that they're receiving in return based on their ROI at the risk of their investment, I think it'd be a good play. You get more draft capital, you can get Nolan Smith, and he can kind of fill a void there as a weak side linebacker. Now, the question remains to be seen. They have Chandler Jones, they have Max Crosby. So where do you fit him? Is he a good inside linebacker? I mean, I'm pretty sure Coach Graham can coach him up and tell him to be whatever he wants to be. But at the end of the day, you draft a player based on his NFL traits. And if you think that he can fit in your scheme, whatever that scheme is, it could be a 4-3 front, right? It could be a bear front, right? It could be a 4-3 under or 4-3. It doesn't matter. If you think you can get that guy and be like, hey, look, the business coach is looking, hey, man, I really think, I know he's a 3-4 outside linebacker, weak side linebacker, I think I can get him. I think I can get him and put him in the best position to make plays because that's what I do. That's what I do. He reminds me of blah, 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 right? It'll be talks about this. Because, again, he's a very hard evaluation because he's been injured this year. Like, again, the most significant growth for a player coming out of college is going from that sophomore or junior year into that year of eligibility, right? Where the case may be. And so when you look at that, you're like eager to see what Nolan Smith can do. Like, oh, man. But again, if you go back to 2021 and 2022, the boxes check off, man. So this is my analysis on him, right? This is my analysis on Nolan Smith. When you talk about the valuation versus evaluation, I love talking football. All right, this is what my evaluation comes down to. I'm just going to read it for you. I said a very strong edge setter at the point of attack. Smith is as fundamentally sound as they come from a leverage win standpoint, from box to spill versus the run. He rarely gives up the edge while understanding how to take on counters and traps while using stack and shed fundamentals to disengage and make plays at or behind the line of scrimmage. Rarely will he be caught out of position in run support using proper hand placement. We talked about that, right? It's one thing to have good leverage, but if you don't have good proper hand placement, you're going to be, see ya. Bye-bye. I'm just saying. While also being a sound tackler in open space. Again, if you can't tackle, you ain't playing, bro. Coaches coach and players play. If you can't tackle, you ain't going to be in the NFL for too long. I'm just saying. That's a fundamental. All right. So, those are things that you look for. And then also on my second part of the analysis, I said at times not strong enough to get disengaged from bigger offensive tackles, get swallowed up once they lock horns with him at the point of attack. But he relies more on speed more than power. And I think that's something with a lot of these prospects that come out when I run these grades, whether it be grading NFL players or college prospects, converting them into the NFL and kind of saying how that conversion kind of plays out. If you don't have any type of array of pass rush moves. Now, again, the positional coach, I can teach him how to do a swim move. I can teach him how to do a spin move. I can teach him how to do a rip. I can teach him how to counter. I can teach him how. Look, any NFL coach can think and truly believes he can get the most out of that player. Otherwise, he wouldn't be that position in the first place. But let's be honest about it. Some players just don't get it. Nolan Smith gets it. Very smart, high football IQ guy. Now, he does need some work on the pass rush. But at the end of the day, you see that get off? Boy, oh boy. I'm just saying. All right. So I like Nolan Smith for a lot of different reasons. I think he's a really, really good pass rush Now, is he going to be a double-digit sack artist? That remains to be seen because, again, I can't say that with conviction because I haven't seen enough sample size to pull from on film. And, again, people are going to just go look, oh, he has 2.5 sacks over the last 2 years and blah. That's great in the box score, bro. Don't do that. That's a big no-no. You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. If Aaron Donald had 2.5 sacks in the year, but then the team as a whole racked up 60 sacks, are you going to be like, oh, Aaron Donald had a bad year? No, odds are he was taking on and eating up double and triple teams, chips off the running back, blowing up holes at or near the line of scrimmage, and creating plays from box to spill for other guys to clean up and mop up. So he's doing the dirty work, right? So it's just crazy how people, when they run these offseason year-end grade, let's grade. Oh, he had double-digit sacks, so he must be good. It's like, no, man, it doesn't work that way. That's a lazy way of doing analysis. I'm just saying. That's a lazy way of doing it. But to me, Smith has an exceptional get-off, and he's able to win the half-man leverage game. We talked about this earlier, right, throughout the season. What is winning half-man is? Well, you get that foot in between that guy's crotch. Win the half-man game. I don't know how else to say it or explain it other than you win the half man. Yeah, you split them in half. Okay, I don't know. And route to the quarterback. So he does a really good job at that. He is scheme dependent. I see a 3-4 outside linebacker, not a 4-3 defensive end fit. And again, those teams that I just mentioned are mainly 3-4 teams, but I can see a team like the Las Vegas Raiders trading down, stockpiling more picks, and then ultimately getting the player they want. Look, there's going to be a lot of trades at the top of the board. And I was talking to some people about this around the NFL circles and around the league and former GMs and so forth. You guys know how I am with the trades. Predicted the Miami Dolphins trade number 3 before they did. And people were like, whoa, how'd you know that? Bro, I've been doing this for a while. All right. It wasn't like no one's going to give you the answer. You have to think for yourself. You have to have a brain and kind of say, okay, I can, based on what this GM does and that scouting department, based on what they do on that GM. Okay, so what are the odds, right? Then you play the odds. I have an algorithm for that. Then you play the odds and you kind of figure it out. But getting back to it, I think Ryan Poles is going to trade out number 1. All right. He's going to trade out at number 1. Now, the team that will trade up to number 1 could be the Indianapolis Colts, and it could be the Las Vegas Raiders. It could be a number of different teams. Ultimately, I don't think it's Las Vegas Raiders. I don't think that GM Dave Ziegler would trade up from 7 to 1 for the quarterback of his choice. I do think that the Colts may do that, though, or even the Texans. Texans move from 2 to 1 just to secure the top spot for the quarterback of their choice. If you look at the analytics, what does that tell you? From moving up 2 to 1, just one spot, you're less likely to trade draft capital than the guy from 4 to 1, as in GM Chris Ballard. But at the end of the day, GM Chris Ballard loves his draft capital, right? He loves yielding first-round picks into multiple second-round picks. Just look at the analytics. But he kind of struck out with Matt Ryan, kind of struck out with Carson Wentz, kind of struck out with Phillip Rivers. So that's 3 strikes, you're out, bro. So he needs to draft a quarterback, maybe a CJ Stroud, maybe go after a Bryce Young if he figures that he's the better player of the two. Maybe swing for the fences and go after a Will Levis who has the NFL traits but kind of inconsistent. Who knows? But I do fully expect the draft board to shake up. That's why my mock draft hasn't been set yet because, again, I don't think Ryan Poles is going to, for the Chicago Bears, if you guys know who Ryan Poles is, I don't think he's going to hold on to that number 1 pick. I really just don't see that happening. I think he's going to trade that, stockpile more picks because he needs the draft capital. He definitely needs the talent. He traded away Roquan Smith, let him go. So, I mean, at the end of the day, what's going on? So you let Hakeem Hicks go the following year. Bilal Nichols comes to the Las Vegas Raiders. So your whole defensive front seven is kind of in shape. Robert Quinn, right? So what's going on here? I don't know. You tell me. What's going on here? But at the end of the day, there is some talent there that the Chicago Bears can go off of. But I just think that it's better served for them to analytically, if I was to put a price on or a bet on the Chicago Bears trading down right now, I'd say it's 95%. 95% that they're going to trade down. Now watch them not trade down. Oh, BEASTwriter, you said it. Look, it is what it is. But at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of shakeups. I can see GM Dave Ziegler holding on to number 7. There's a lot of talk that they're going to select a quarterback. Look, there's a lot of free agent quarterbacks that are going to be just as good. And again, Jimmy Garoppolo knows the system. I covered Jimmy Garoppolo, the San Francisco 49ers. He was a New England Patriot. Who was on that scouting department when they drafted Jimmy Garoppolo? Oh, that's right, GM Dave Ziegler. So was Nick Caserio at the Houston. I'm just saying. The dynamic there, could the Raiders possibly trade up to number 2 with the Houston Texans and Houston Texans drop to number? I'm just saying, if there's a quarterback that you really want to go after, they're going to do that. Now, is it going to happen? Probably not. Because, I mean, like, I don't know. A lot of it's smoke. I talked to fellow beat writers and I talked to other people and they're like, oh, well, I think they're going to do this, or I'm hearing this and that. And just like, for me, I don't know. I just don't see that happening. I just don't see them trading up unless they have a really strong conviction on Bryce Young. I think Bryce or CJ Stroud, those are the only two quarterbacks. You wouldn't want to trade up from 7 to 2 for a guy like Will Levis. I just don't like it. And people are talking Anthony Richardson. I just don't like his ball placement. And people who say it's not a big deal, you can kind of coach that. Trust. Like, ball placement is considered accuracy. You have to throw on the proper shoulder and stride. Wide receivers are going to get upset. You're going to leave your quarterback, your wide receiver out to dry when they run these deeper routes, because that safety is going to be a seeking missile, taking out the receivers. I'm just saying, man, it can be a disaster. Even for a rookie quarterback. I'm just saying, I would rather have a guy who has accuracy, poise, calm, collected, and can game manage, rather than a guy who has the NFL traits to be a superstar but doesn't have accuracy. You can't, yes, you can teach accuracy but at the end of the day, you are who you are. And that's why the projection part of it is so difficult. Like, I don't care if a guy has the strongest arm in the game. I don't care. Like, how's his ball placement? Like, if you could throw it and chuck it 75 yards downfield, great. Jamarcus Russell, cool story. But how does that convert during the game? Like, for me, that's what I look for. That's why I think Bryce Young, by head and shoulders, not because I'm a Roll Tide Roll fan, but Roll Tide Roll. That's why Bryce Young, to me, is head and shoulders above any other quarterback in the draft class. And people talk about his frame. Look, that's out of your element. I'm in the fitness game. I can tell you he can bulk up and get that lean muscle mass that you need him without compromising any of that speed. And he would still be a superstar and be able to endure those hits. I'm just saying, man. And plus, you can't even hit the quarterback in the NFL these days. So a lot of times, defensive backs, or when you hit that second and third level, they're already throttling down because they don't want to get fined or penalized. Let's just keep it 100. The NFL is, I wouldn't say the no fun league, but it's not the Ronnie Lott days. It's not the George Atkinson days. It's not those days, right? We can just lay the wood and be like, okay, that's cool. You're a runner. No, man. If you're the quarterback, runners are typically protected, even though they're not protected. Just look. If Aaron Rodgers runs 30 yards downfield and you hit him, you sniff him, it's going to be a flag. Same. Anyways, I hope you guys like this live stream and this podcast. Technically, it's not a live stream, but I'll be posting it as a premiere. Please give it a thumbs up. Also, you can send me a super thanks. It's a money icon. So if you like the work, like the channel, like the BEASTwriter movement we're trying to build here in the DOB, please consider sending me a super chat or a super thanks. And that goes a long, long way in helping upkeep of the channel. So again, thank you for tuning in. I had a lot of fun watching the game film. I'm going to be breaking down the other Georgia products. I already graded the 2021 first round picks, who I believe are going to be first round picks. And I am now converting those grades into the 2022 film. So be on the lookout tomorrow for another live stream and podcast premiere video, because what I'm going to be doing is, when we grade the snap, not the box score, you're going to get information that you will find nowhere else on the web. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. I hope you had fun, because I know I had fun. And that'll be it for today. I hope you guys had a lot of fun. And we'll do it all again on grading the snap, not the box score. Take care. Have a good day. BEASTwriter out.